Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Luca. Welcome to my home in London. Come in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Be sure to visit our website, homeworthy.com, to discover amazing furniture, art, accessories, and more, all handpicked by our editors to help transform your house into a home. All of the items are inspired by the episodes you see here on Homeworthy. Enjoy!
I'm Luca Rufin. I'm interior designer, and we are in my flat in Bloomsbury, London. So this is a terraced house built in the late 1920s. I think it's 1929. So we're moving to Victorian architecture, but still very Regency, still very classical, and that's why I liked about it. And it's still in a very nice bit of London because London has been bombed during the war, but that street has been entirely kept alive and protected, etc. So it's very nice. It has a very nice atmosphere, and there are these very typical terraced brick houses in London, and it's great. And the house, through times, has been changed and alterated. Nowadays, it's divided in two different flats. You have a downstairs and a basement, and a ground floor flat, and you have the first floor, second floor flat, and there's a little yard at the back, which is very nice in summer. So I started my professional life as costume maker. I studied costume making, historical and theatrical costume making in Lyon, in France. And I started that life. I worked in Paris and in Normandy, where I'm from, for a few times, for short times, and then COVID happened. I moved to Britain and I tried to work in the performance world in Britain, but with COVID it was very difficult, and I decided to do a shift of career and to interior designing. I haven't been trained into it, so I'm a self-taught one, and I'm self-employed. I have my little company called Caligula Supernova Interiors, and I've started the 7th of October 2022. I had a proper launch in June 23, with an exhibition called 10 Objects. Now we are in the entrance hall, which is shared with the flat upstairs. Being a shared space, it was quite tricky because it wasn't very pretty and it was very difficult to alterate. And so it was really a very light touch to make it nice, but unpersonal. So it's just, dado, a bit of paint, few print, as you can see, which are 18th century French, and a very simple side table. So people just can walk and pass and without being shocked by, oh, we are in the home of someone else, even if we have to go upstairs to another home. So just like that, it was very quick and easy to do. So now follow me into the dining room. The dining room is interesting because the house, being divided in two flats, it is a bit upside down. So you have the dining room on the first floor with the kitchen and the bedrooms and the sitting room on the ground floor. So here we are in the dining room, and it's a mix of French, Italian antiques. So you have amazing Italian screen, which is 18th century from northern Italy, with painted scene from Commedia dell'arte. And you have another piece, which is quite important. I talked about my exhibition back in June, about the 10 objects, and this painting was the peak of that exhibition. It was a cell exhibition, and this is a 17th century Italian painting by the studio of Pietro da Cortona. And it represents a very classical scene, which is Antiochus and Trasnice. It's a very interesting composition, very classical. And you can see it was painted by different hands because you have different qualities of executions. The hand. here are very good, same with the feet and some drapery. And then you have the little Cupid, which is not the best. He's a bit chunky, the perspective is not the best, but it's very nice. And it was in a lovely country house in Northumberland. Here we have an amazing, also Italian, it's a lot of Italian stuff, Piedemontese mirror. It's 18th century too, and it fits perfectly the space. It was the bit when I bought it in auction from Christie's. It was like, would it fit, would it not fit? And it did, and it's perfect. You have also amazing 19th century candelabra here, which are after Van Cleve candelabra from the early 18th century. On the mantle, you have something which is very British. It's, when friends or, when you have people coming to stay, etc., families, send you cards or thank you letters. It's very British things, or invitation to some events, to lay it on the mantle of the fireplace. So I kept the tradition, and because I like it, it gives a little, when I talked to Leah about a house which is lived in with a little light touch objects which make it lived, if I could say, those are part of those things that make it more personal, not just a set. And you have that also very nice French ormolu candelabra in the style of Louis XV. And that table, it's rather nice. I found it by, inadvertence, by a little mistake. It's from a little antique dealer in Alsace, and it's original Charles X, so 1830. It's quite pretty, and the chairs were original too. And there was a wedding gift for the person who commissioned it in the 1830s, 1820s. So it's really nice, and yes, and they all have different provenance, interesting histories. It's they come from different palace or whatever. I mean, that screen is interesting because recently there has been a sale from the Guinness family, from one of their country houses, and in that sale you had not a copy, but I would say a little brother of that screen, which was shorter, with very similar scene and very similar painting. So it's interesting sometimes, as an interior designer, if you work a lot with antiques and through auction houses, you can find some items which are similar or part originally from the same lot, but has been divided. And that's quite fun. When we moved here, it's interesting because it was rental flat. It is still a rent flat. And the room were quite different. They were all tired, but the dining room where we are at the moment was fuchsia wall and with awful wall lights, and the kitchen was blue and yellow, and you had a very nasty carpet through the entire place, and it wasn't very. I mean, it was tired. It wasn't looking very nice, and it was just shouting of help me to be made, I suppose, pretty and lived in. And what happened in 2020 at the end of the first lockdown, moved here, and just at the right moment because the landlord was on the way to redo the flat because the lease of the former occupant came to an end, so they planned to strip out the kitchen and remove some stuff, and we're just like, no, the kitchen is so great, don't touch it. We'll manage the work. Just if we pay for it, we'll manage the work, and what we did. So we just repainted the kitchen and did some different work. I mean, we removed all the carpets from the house, and thankfully the first floor still had its floorboards, but the downstairs they had nasty concrete floor. So then we added a lovely reclaimed parquet floor from a Victorian house from northern London, and now it looks much better. And of course, if you have a dining room, you have a kitchen. Let me show you the kitchen. It's not a historical kitchen. It has a lot of charm. I mean, it must have been purchased in the 1980s, but it's quite pretty. It's a bit knackered in some places. But yeah, it was quite tricky with that flat because it has a lack of storage space, and it was finding some little way to gain storage space. So for example, we had put a drawer dishwasher under the sink, so it's easier just there. It's easier to gain all the space, so we can have a washing machine. We don't have to go to the laundry all the time. And yeah, in the room, little objects which are quite nice and important to my eyes. So there you have 3 pieces of art, which is one is a lithograph from Picasso, but which is very pretty, but that one is quite important to me because it was made by a friend. She is a Romanian and Bulgarian artist. She lives in London, and she did a lot of her work based on her sad love stories, and you will see different portraits through the flat of her ex-boyfriends. So this is one of hers. Going back to the storage space thing, storage, yes, in the place, it's not very efficient. So every time there is a little space, like the fireplace, which is not usable because the flue has been blocked, it's a good opportunity to use it as a storage space. And being in Britain, picnic is a tradition. So you have 2 sets of picnic baskets. So if you want to go to Hyde Park or Green Park or Regent's Park during the summer or the spring, or even sometimes the winter for the bravest of us, it's very useful and nice to have a picnic set. And inside, it's very funny objects that I bought in Normandy for a couple of quid. Some of you might recognize that. It's 18th century pot de chambre. It's basically 18th century loo. But it makes, if you remove the lid, a very great flower vase for big flower arrangement. So here we have a very nice china set, which is interesting. It's antique again. I really like antique. It's blue and white china, and those actually 2 tea bowls, which are late 18th century, are original from China. Same with the teapot. And what happened is they have been shipped to the UK, and a company which is very known, I tried to find, I couldn't find. So it's basically Meissen, and they made a copy of it and a set entirely with, because at the time coffee was more popular than tea, so they made coffee cups and little milk jug, etc. And it's very delicate, very pretty. Has been used through time, so the teapot has been mended with a little bit of silver. The lid has been broken too, but I still like it. It's very, very nice. It's a lovely blue, and just the gilding added by the British is very delicate, and it's very nice. When you have tea, with friends or guests. I don't drink it like the English. I drink it very dark. I don't pour any milk or sugar in it. I know there's a huge debate of if you pour the milk and the tea after, etc., or the tea first and the milk after, but I'm not doing that. I'm just drinking the tea on its own. So it's quite interesting having a conversation about tea with British people because they love their tea. The house, being a rental flat and being derelict, etc., had a lot of potential and a lot of things can be done to it. The space gives a very nice surface, and and not being part of the interior designing world at the time, it was more to create a space which is very personal. I was still working in the theatrical world, as a costume maker, and yes, I went for different things. I had different questions. Should I do very French interiors? Should I do very British interiors because we're in London? Should I do a mix of things? And I went to the mix of things to do a bit of continental influence, a bit of British influence, and I started to source antiques, mostly piece of arts. It's not much of arts, it's a little collection. It's a good start. But especially object with a history, which is important. I mean, when I'm looking for some stuff, I know where it's from, if it had a little background or something like that. And so you have quite interesting pieces in the place, and I'm quite pleased about. Just for the value, history, the historical, I mean by not big history but little history value, and what it talks to people about and what it represents. And of course, aesthetically, it's nice too, but it's quite and trying to create a balance between all those objects. I love to cook. Being French and having grew up in France is a bit cliche, I know, but I've been very lucky. My parents always cooked. We had a veg garden at home, so always fresh products. I grew up in a family where we had quite a bit of land, so we had, apple orchards, cherry orchards, so fresh fruits, and it's a lovely area with a lot of different products, which in terms of meat, seafood, fish. And it's quite great to be able to grow up and being taught about food. And then now I do love to cook and I do love to entertain. That's why I wanted a dining space in the flat, and with the dining table and a kitchen which is actually usable and not just a little cupboard to do things. So it's quite great, and being able to do things and cook and having different dishes and stuff like that, and just make nice food, not necessarily sophisticated, but just nice simple food that when people eat, one of the best compliments it says, oh, it reminds me, for example, my childhood, or some very precise memory, something like that. It's I think the best compliment about cooking. So as you can see, I do like a bit of drink. Yes, there's a nice collection of champagne bottles. I mean, I always start a party or a dining party serving champagne. It's, I think, a very easy but nice way to do. I mean, you can see they all depend on what there is on promotion in Waitrose. If there's a sale on some bottles, I'll get more. And there's a bit of diverse. I do like, actually, a very precise brand of champagne, which is a very small champagne producer from France, but I can't find it in Britain, which is quite annoying. But yeah, so nice collection of bottles. It's quite, I suppose, shows the tone when people come to the house and see the bottle of champagne. They know it's a house where they will party. It must have been less than a year when I moved here, and the house in the street was having a makeover, and there were, it has been lived in for 50 or 60 years by the old lady, and she passed away, and they sold the flat, and etc. And they were emptying it, and in the streets it was just like a junkyard, and they were binning that plaster bust of Apollo Belvedere, so has been rescued from the street. There is one thing, I mean, it might sound a bit narcissistic. There is a portrait of me made by very dear friends of mine, which are painters, portraitist painters, called Philip and Chloe Cath. And it's not because it's a portrait of me, it's because it's a portrait made by very close friends, very dear friends. So more than a piece of art or whatever, it has a sentimental value. And all the process of being painted is quite intense. You really have an exchange with someone. It's not just sitting there. You talk, you have a moment of deep talk, and you can talk about silly things sometimes, and then you have quite a moment for 20 or 30 minutes or even an hour, and it's for quite a long time, and it's quite great, and it's all what represents that painting. I think it's why I should pick it up as my one favorite object. Now we'll continue to see the rest of the house. Follow me downstairs then. So the staircase is in very small space, lined with this very nice stripy blue wallpaper. I really like blue and stripes. It's something very classical but nice, and you can't go wrong with it. But because it's a small space, we wanted to do a little bit of warming it with a lot of pictures, and especially that one is very important. This is the painting made by my dear friends Chloe and Philip, and it was painted in summer 19 when I was still young and beautiful. No, it's very nice. It's they're very talented, and it's a very important piece for me. So if we continue that way, you will see more different works in the staircase. So this is part of the drawings made by my friend Steffi, one of her ex-boyfriend. You have little cornflowers that I collected from different places. I really like cornflowers. And different drawings and prints, find it in different places. We're now in the sitting room, which is the more comfy area of the place. And because it is upside down, the light is not the best. Even if we have a big window, thankfully, it's still quite dark, but it's nice in winter evening. It can be very cozy with all the candle lights. Because I don't tend to use the spotlight anymore. I mean, except for cleaning and tidying, practical things. Otherwise, I lit the room by candles, and it goes very, very cozy. And yeah, and it's a very nice room. I think it's a good size, and especially if you have people coming, and after having supper, you have coffee here, or you start with the drinks here. It's very nice. Yeah, I want to point to the floor, which is that's amazing. Parquet floor from the Victorian school, and more than painters, my dear friend Philip and Chloe are also good, as we call, truffle pigs for good things like that, and they found it, and they said, "Oh, I know you were looking for something like that, so we found that. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." So they got it for me. It's really good. It's really pretty, and it makes them, lift the room and the space, because the problem being in a basement, it's quite low ceiling, and you don't have much windows, so it's difficult to make it glamorous, or at least nice. So that parquet floor adds a lot of character to it. As you can see, I suppose you might have noticed upstairs, I have quite a few pelargoniums. I'm very fond of those. Also, they're very classical English. You can see them in a lot of interiors in Britain, country houses, or even town, in flats or houses in town. Yeah, they're very nice. They brings, nice scent, and they have lovely pink or white flowers. So there, as you can see, you have a nice painting by Luc Adorned. So I've met Luke in 19 now, and I had little things for personal project about having a bed and breakfast in Normandy to save my family house from the ruin. And this was planned to be in the house, but the project didn't happen, so it came to London. It's a very nice painting of men having fun and party with a martini drink. I don't know if you can see. And there too, the drinks. Important having a good drinks table when you have guests come. So these armchairs are 19th century in the style Louis XV, they're French. Got it from Christie's. But the place where they used to be, I think, were just decorative. They were not meant to be sat on, because the silk is rather fragile. It's lovely gold green silk, but having people sitting on it has been worn off. It gives a bit of what they call gentry or country house condition, but sadly, it has been upholstered with sort of cotton watty thing. It's not the prettiest. I was thinking about changing it, but I really like the colour of the silk, so I don't know yet if I will change them. Maybe in time, if I find something rather nice to remove and replace the silk with it. So that big tapestry behind me is quite special. It's a lovely scene from Don Quixote. You have Sancho Panza being lifted in the air by the peasants, and you have Don Quixote just there watching the scene, and it's a very nice tapestry which might come from Saunders or Thotheby's, I don't remember, from an Astorcell, and it's Bristol, but it's a bit knackered, has suffered, but it's very pretty. I mean, the faces of the people are very good, and it's a very nice still colour. I mean, some of the colour have faded a bit, but it's very decorative. It gives a warm atmosphere to the room and a rich atmosphere too. And that tapestry used to be part of 12, depicting different scenes from Don Quixote. And it was a very popular subject in the 17th century and early 18th century. On terms of personal style, that place, I think, could be qualified as classical with a bit of eclecticism. I know sometimes people will oppose those words, but I mean, you have some tone which are very classical British, like the bone through the house, but also having that screen, which is amazing piece of art on itself, and a very useful space because you hide a lot of things behind screen. It's very good for storage, and that place needed a lot of storage. So and so you have those eclectic pieces, and with very traditional. I mean, the fabric of the building is quite traditional. It's very traditional British. So you have this classicism with the staircase, you know, the pine wood floor and fireplaces, etc. With some not usual furniture for Britain, I would say. So it's a mix of things, and yeah, I mean, I have a very important source of inspiration for interiors, which I think is one of the high peak of interior designer. He wasn't an interior designer either. He was a fashion designer. He was Hubert de Givenchy, but had such a good eye for sourcing amazing piece of arts and furniture and gathering them together and create very, very good interiors. And so I tend to try to reach that aesthetic. So I don't know if I succeeded, but I'm very pleased with what I've done with the flat. It's very nice home to live in. Even if with the flat I try to create a balance and, you know, kind of a journey, when you still have differences between the rooms. You start with the dining room, which is quite minimalistic in a way, if I can say, because I mean, some objects are still very obviously huge and have a huge presence, but it's much more simpler in terms of tones compared to the sitting room. So it was a bit of the things where, you know, in the dining room, especially I use it mostly for dinner parties, so it's lit by candlelight, so you don't really see the rest of things. And when you have your dessert, your pudding, and then you transition to the sitting room, and after having a long and nice dinner, you want to sit soft and have a coffee or digestif, and you want this, you know, I don't know, that kind of cocoon atmosphere, and having, you know, richer fabric and more, you know, sitting surface, which this amazing 18th century daybed, for example, you can fit 4 people in it. It's great. It gives this, you know, nice, warm atmosphere and welcome atmosphere, which is great. You know, just calm downstairs and just sit there, and you have your coffee or drink, and it's great. The coffee table is from a brand. I don't know if it's. I mean, I know they sell in Britain, but I think they're French. They're called AM/PM. I know it's a very funny name for a French brand. They do good designer pieces for good price, I would say. Even if there's a lot of antiques in the room, I wanted still a bit of more modern pieces, and especially coffee table. I wanted a coffee table, but because the room has really much of presence with the sofa, with the cushions, with the chairs, with the tapestry. I wanted something was lighter, and the fact that it's glass and brass, it's lovely polished brass. It's not too heavy visually, and I like books, as you can see, with the bookcases and the coffee table, and especially I think book, even if it's first to cultivate yourself, to grow your spirits and to learn, it's also a very nice object of decoration. and it's a shame sometimes to hide them when you have beautiful covers. I don't know, talk about a story, or magazines. I mean, magazines, they're created with amazing covers, and it would be sad to hide them in the bookshelves. Sometimes you don't have choice, but if you can display them, it's great. I mean, I have a few different books, which, one particularly, from a photographer that you must know. He's very famous in America. It's Slimarin. I mean, this is one of his many books. It's Dolce Vita, and I love his work since I'm a child. So let's have a look at the fireplace. This is hiding the back of the fireplace, which is not very interesting. This, on the other hand, is interesting. It's a chalice bell. It's 18th century, early 19th century European. So it's from nunnery in Britain. It was created in the 19th century. And they had an amazing archives of religious and liturgic fabric and clothes, etc. Because they used to embroider stuff for the Church of England. They closed down, and they were doing a big sale, but for nothing, basically. And I got that amazing chalice bell, which is red and it's Catholic. And the red in Catholic Church, especially for liturgy, is used for the Pentecost. It's lovely, it has gold thread, it has painted silk on it. It's a very nice, delicate piece of art. And you can find above the fireplace on the mantel the same things as upstairs, the collection of postcards and invitations and thank you cards. Before leaving that room, I just want to point a very discreet piece. Discreet is maybe not the word, because it's quite massive. It's an amazing solid marble bust of Mercury. It was made by a friend of mine called Corin Johnson. He's an amazing sculptor. He's based in Clerkenwell. And yes, he made that for the Georgian Group exhibition back in 2017. And then he had it, and there it is. It's so great. It needed a plinth, but I like it on the floor. It has a bit of modern art things. But in good time, a plinth will be there, but it's so heavy that it's impossible to move. And to lift it, you need a very strong person, that I'm not. And you need a very solid plinth too. So in good time, you will receive the plinth and be lifted. But yeah, it's very, very good. It's after the antique from statue. It's a very big statue where it has little Bacchus on his shoulder. I think London life is great. I really like living in Britain. It's a very, very nice country. I really like it. I mean, I've always been familiar with Britain. When I grew up, one of my best friends, she was British. Her mother was Irish and her father was British, and they were in Normandy. And so I've been very close to British culture, and something that I'm very fond of. I think I will make a good part of my life in Britain. I might go back in Normandy. I mean, things, are never settled and, can change, etc. Normandy or somewhere else in France, but I think at the moment I'm very pleased to be in Britain. Now we should go into the bedroom. The bedroom is, I think, was actually the most challenging room in the flat because it's very small, and it was the question of the storage space, of the bed space, and what to do, and how to make it nice and quite, a bit impressive sometimes, even if it's not a room which is necessarily shown to guests or friends. sometimes, if you have a little snoop when they're looking for the door to the bathroom and they have, oh, that's interesting. So, yes, and I'm a great believer in small space, big thing, where you can allow yourself to have an impressive thing in small space because it makes the things even more impressive. I'm a bit delusion of grandeur. So there you have a very small bedroom with a very big 4-poster bed with amazing silk. It was built for the space. So the bed, because the space is so tiny, had to be built in. So it's bed base that has been bought and then wood and then has been covered in silk. So it was literally built in for the space to fit in the space. There was no way you could manage to bring it in. The bed drops, the curtains are actually old curtains found on eBay. They're very pretty too. They were found with the help of my dear friend Chloe. She's very nice and she's very good at finding those stuff. It's very nice when you can have friends with good taste, but also good at finding some stuff. The question in that room is the storage space, and with the side of the bed, you can't have a chest of drawers, and it would be a bit sad to have, something already bought as a wardrobe, because also the space between the mantel and the wall is not very deep. So when for building a bespoke wardrobe, it's plywood, but it's covered with a very, very nice hand-painted wallpaper from de Gournay, which make it very glamorous. So, there you go. You have a look on my clothes. As I said upstairs in the kitchen, fireplaces actually can be very useful storage space when you don't have much storage space. And there I hide my suitcases and other travelling bags in it, and because it's not very pretty, you don't want to see your suitcase or bags. I've used a very nice, can be used as rug, as a tablecloth, or as a bedspread. It's a very nice woven fabric from Tangier in Morocco, and it was made by a lovely, lovely man, and had a very nice conversation with him. He's the third generation of weaver, and his son will take up the business, and they're so pretty, and you have different colours. It's so nice, and they're so good qualities. So I had to buy him some. So I really like Tangier and Morocco. It's a very, very attractive culture to me. So I needed to have a bit of it in my place in London. On the mantel, you have a little painting, a little portrait, which is Charles II, dressed as a Roman. You can't really see it, but there's a lion on his shoulder and there's tassels. But that painting, which is the most interesting, is a travelling portrait, because you have a little, if I move there, put it from the bottom. You can travel with it. And I think that was originally from the portraitist himself. So it was a bit like your portfolio. You travel to your client and show him the different things you can do, but to protect it from the journey, because travelling to carriage, I suppose, was quite different from travelling from the train or an airplane, or just sending an email with the portfolio on it. You had to protect it, so it's very nice to still have the little shutter to protect, and it's very, very nice, delicate picture. What makes home come alive, I think, is when you try with your home, or when you try to make it yours. When you start to make it represent who you are, at your best. And it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, you always have little bits of things falling down or crumbling down because you can't keep everything pristine. But it's part of the history and of how things move and things change, and how, sometimes you can pile books in a room, or it's these little things, these little objects, light touches that can make it very personal, can make it home. It's not just not a pretty set, It's a space which is lived in, a space where you can feel okay to live in, where you feel comfortable. I think comfortable is a good way to put it. Where you're not frightened to sit on a piece of, on the chair or on the sofa, or to touch a piece of furniture. It's not a museum, it's lived in. It's on the door. There is that little piece, which is not very much, but I used to work as a costume maker. So this I made for dressing a party for a birthday. It's a Regency waistcoat from, with a lovely fabric from Pierre Frey. When I did my first tutu, it was quite emotional because the first one, it was for Swan Lake, but for children. So a short version of it in Paris for Théâtre du Mogador. And so it wasn't the best in terms of quality and the most beautiful, but because it was the first tutu I've ever made, it has the little emotional bit of it. Otherwise, during my costume studies, I made quite a lot of historical costumes, which was quite nice. I liked doing that. The most pleasing is when you see something that started from an idea and ended into physical things on stage. And the same with interior designing. When you start from an idea and you end up with a house or a flat or whatever, real. So what was thought is now real. You can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can live it. What does the word home means for me? A place where I feel always welcome and pleased to come back, I suppose. It's a very generic answer, but where I'm in it, I'm not feel sad, where I can relax, when you have social life. I mean, I do love to entertain here. That's why I wanted a practical and usable kitchen where I could cook and have a nice dining table, so I can have friends and people to come and have supper or lunch. It's great. But also, having friends is nice, but sometimes it's also nice to have a moment to relax, a moment of your own. And home, I suppose, it's a place which can do both, and you can feel yourself, and you can have people that you care about coming to yours.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.